Oh,
Oh my
holy
goodness.
cow, we're live.
We're back.
Can you believe it?
I can't believe it. I think we kind of forgot a little bit. You know, we're late here today. We'll just step right up.
By like 61 seconds.
I'm just gonna, I'll take the blame for this one. I was I'm out of the swing of things here a little bit. We've been off for
Yeah,
a
I
couple
mean, this
weeks.
2-week vacation went to your head here.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that we even did a podcast in the first place. Had to remember that.
So did I, honestly. I was I was sitting around not talking to my pal Noah, and I honestly crying myself to sleep most nights.
Oh no. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, it's okay now. Now I can laugh myself to sleep like a sane and reasonable person.
Yeah, of course, laughing yourself to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, dude,
Geez.
I switched over. Oh no, hang on a second. Did I mess up my audio here? Can you hear me fine?
I hear you. It might have changed. I can't really tell.
All right, let me check. Okay, no, it didn't. That's great news because I went over to QuickTime and I was like, let me do the thing, and then QuickTime used my AirPods microphone by default, and that did not go well. It did not.
You gotta love the AirPods Max.
Yeah, no, I will say the one good thing about AirPods Max is the battery life is stupendous. It's actually insane how good it is.
That is fair. I feel like headphones generally have pretty good battery life. Not earbuds. Earbuds maybe, but headphones, like even these are a few years old and they're still like very, like I charge them very, very occasionally and they charge very fast. I feel like they're usually pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's not a huge power requirement because they're really not that loud. They're loud because they're directly on our heads, on our faces. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is that they just last longer because you're not charge cycling them as frequently.
That's true. Yeah, you just, unless if you use them every day for hours and hours a day, but maybe not everyone does that. I guess also
I use these pretty frequently, but even then I only charge them like maybe a couple times a month if I'm really using them.
That's true.
Usually once a month if I'm just doing podcast and an occasional listening.
Yeah, and like these are micro USB, which is really annoying.
Ew.
So, well, they're old. There's a new generation that has USB-C, but these are micro USB. So I'm glad I don't have to charge them very often.
Yeah, because then you'd have to carry. Could you imagine carrying a micro USB cable with you like an idiot?
Well, I do have one in my in the case that the headphones came in. So these have an actual case, by the way, not just a little.
What? This isn't a case to you?
Questionable.
This thing that gets imprints from the magnets and like shiny where it gets touched, and where the rubber stretches out where you lift it up so it looks terrible. You mean that's not a case to you?
Yeah, the one that doesn't protect the band at all, and it barely protects the cups.
Sags and then it hurts your head.
Yeah, I think that one, that case. Yeah, right?
No, I'm pretty sure that's I mean, I asked Apple and they said that it was perfect and had no flaws. So.
Yeah. I guess. I mean, Apple's never wrong.
Absolutely. Now, I do have one update to share with everyone, but in order to do that, I think we should start the podcast a little bit early. Are you on board with that?
This is very exciting. I want to hear this update.
It's not that exciting, but I just felt like it should be in the real podcast instead of this little fake podcast that we do.
I am so excited that I can barely contain myself. This is going to be incredible news. This is going
I can really hear it on your voice.
This is going to be like you will remember this moment. Your life before this moment and your life after this moment will be two distinct periods of time.
Yeah, it's like 9/11, but not negative.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah, we should get started then.
Okay. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Dark Mode, the podcast that brings you sage advice from two technology experts. And I'll tell you what, that's not just what we call ourselves. It's what our moms tell people when they can't figure out the HDMI input. I'm your host, Luke Miani.
And I'm your host, Noah Rubin. On this show, we take questions from listeners, attempt to answer them to varying degrees of success, and maybe even have a laugh or two along the way.
Yeah, that's a great intro. I'm so glad. That honestly, unironically, that's probably like the only like good thing that we've ever created.
I mean, it's the thing. It's very consistent. It's been.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been there right since day one, right? And it's very. Yeah. It's the classic. Even though usually we don't take questions from listeners, we still say that we do.
Varying degrees of success.
Right. I'd argue that you say varying degrees, but usually it's on the negative end.
Well,
but we try.
True. Yeah, I mean, trying is what makes the world go round. That's what I always say. And I think we try enough. We do take comments from listeners, mainly viewers.
That's true. I wonder, I guess we shouldn't change the intro. I was thinking you don't want to mess with perfection, but maybe that would be more accurate.
I mean, I don't think it has the same ring to it. If we were to say, welcome to Dark Mode, the podcast that brings you sage advice from two technology experts, also debatable, by the way. And that's not just what we call ourselves. It's what our moms call people when insert unplanned phrase that I think up on the spot. And then you would say, in this show, we respond to comments from watchers to varying degrees of success. Like, I don't know. I don't think that has the same ring to it.
I think it's, one of those things where you've heard the same thing. By the way, we're almost at episode 100. I know Luke and I discussed this last time a couple weeks ago, but we're getting close to episode 100. But I feel like if you've heard this intro for almost 100 episodes and then you hear it and it's slightly different, it's like, I don't know. It's kind of weird. It kind of throws you off there. I don't know if we want to do. I mean, we saw what happened with Twitter going to be called X now, and I feel like this would be as big, if not bigger, of a change. And we don't.
And also as hated.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, no. I think if we were to change that, there would be an uprising, and I'd probably get canceled. So we're not going to do that. But what we are going to do is get to that update that I alluded to beforehand. And that is that I have now officially switched over to using the Mac Pro. Now, I know that you guys saw that I bought one in addition to the Mac Studio. And because the Mac Studio got here first, I had just been using that. So what I've been using, I mean, it literally just unplugged and then went straight where my old Mac Studio was. But I'm now using the Mac Pro full time. And there are some positives and there are some negatives to that. The positive is I'm very excited about having expansion. I'm very excited. I've been in talks with a bunch of different brands. And my goal is to try to put together a video where I basically say, like, all right, I do video editing. So I can only optimize this thing for video editing, but I'm going to make this thing absolutely incredible. It's going to blow your socks off. Like your socks, they're on your feet right now. All right. But by the time I'm done, they're going to be not on your feet. You understand?
Wow. That's very impressive.
Yeah. So, I'm talking like the ultimate Mac Pro setup. Will it be cost effective? Probably not. But that's what I'm going to find out. The negatives. Because the Mac Pro is the size of a small state, I have to put it on the ground, which does provide me with a very nice ottoman for me to put my feet on, but also means that I needed to add further complexity and wires to my setup by putting a docking station on my desk.
Mm-hmm.
And the docking station, like all of them, the SD card, which is the most important functionality that the Mac Pro inexplicably does not have. The SD card, when you put it on some sort of an external interface, I need to get a different one because it's just too slow. And I'm like, holy crap, I got used to those UHS 2 SD card slots on the MacBook Pro, on the Mac Studio. I love those. They're great. And I want that on the Mac Pro. I would honestly buy, and this is going to sound really dumb, if Apple made like a desktop hub, like a little minimal aluminum thing that could sit on your desk, and it had like SD card, 2 USB-C, and maybe that's it. Just a little fella. I would buy that. I would pay like way too much money for that to fit the look, get that SD card, some USBs on my desk. Tasty.
That would actually be an interesting product for Apple to make. I never really thought about that. But like, I feel like it could fit in. Obviously, it fits in with the Mac Pro. It could fit in any Apple display. Like, even if you have a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio and you want more expansion, or if you have like a MacBook that you use in clamshell mode and you just dock it on a thing. I don't know. I kind of like that idea.
That would be, dude, now I really want this. I'm sad now. I wish that Apple would make that. I also wish that they would make a new Pro Display XDR. My goodness. What's the holdup? It's been 4 years.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. I know we've discussed this before, and it just seems like, I don't know. It seems like some of Apple's like desktop displays have been having some issues. There was the whole like studio display thing. We haven't gotten a Pro Display XDR in a long time. Mm-hmm. A lot of questions.
Yeah, Apple needs to get back on their display game, their standalone display game, because obviously the MacBooks are killing it. But on the desktop side, the iMac, the 24-inch iMac is fine, nothing crazy. And the studio display is fine. It's just too expensive. And I know that Apple's going to always release stuff that's too expensive. But the thing that makes the studio display work is that it's 5K. And that's just not something that you can really get elsewhere. So for 5K and to have that matching perfect like aesthetic, I'm okay spending the money. I just wish that we had a 30-inch mini LED ProMotion panel. That's really what I want.
Yeah, that would definitely. I mean, there's that. There's like the Pro Display XDR, but even just like a 27-inch iMac or like a 30-inch iMac, that was a rumor. And that's not going to be the super fancy, super crazy Pro Display XDR, but like even that we don't have yet. So definitely the external displays, the standalone displays. I don't know. Apple's something's going on there.
They got to hurry up. I also have to say, this is totally unrelated. I just noticed this comment and it confuses me. Congrats on making a Linus Tech Tips episode. Are they saying that I made an episode that was similar to Linus Tech Tips, or are they saying that I appeared in an episode of Linus Tech Tips? Because I am very confused either way.
Probably the latter, but hopefully
I feel
someone
like I
would
have heard about it.
Okay, like, someone said you were in it. Maybe someone in the chat can
why don't I know
people
about
are saying you were. I want to know what video this was.
Which episode? This is, hang on, stop the press. When was I in a LTT video?
We got to get to the bottom of this.
Was this like a today thing? I'm very perplexed, I must say. If I was in an LTT episode, it certainly didn't kick back very much towards my channel.
All right, something about the Mac Pro.
Oh, okay, wait, let's find this. I don't remember this at all. I didn't know about anything. If someone could point me to a timestamp in a video, that would be expedient. Because I don't know what I'm looking for. Anyway, that's fun.
Yeah, I really want to know.
His last one? Oh, is this just today? This is interesting. Sorry, this is not a very interesting podcast.
Yeah.
Because I literally am just like sitting here watching a Linus Tech Tips video so that I can see a screenshot of my Mac Pro thumbnail. I would really like a timestamp.
Yeah, hopefully I'm sure someone in the chat will be able to find it here.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Anyway, while I await on being notified of my fame, you know. And by the way, everyone keeps pointing out that I put my name here as Mr. Miami, and that's not correct. And I don't know if you know, but I am aware of how to spell my name. It's a little goofy joke.
Oh, good. All right, I'll change.
Yeah, I've been
classic.
I've been like, you know, I've been having some fun here. There you go. I like that, Mr. Rubin, but he spelled it like the sandwich. That's what I'm talking about. We have a little fun with the name tags from time to time.
Yeah, usually you like occasionally will change your name tag to something. We were like Mr. M and Mr. R for a while, and you changed your name tag, and then I was like, oh, okay, I'll change mine too. We got a match.
Yeah, someone, apparently it's on Twitter. Sorry, X. Great segue, by the way. I hate X. That's so stupid. It is the dumbest, most idiotic, like childish, pointless thing that you could do. And like whenever people have been dumping on X, like people have been saying like, oh, who cares? It's just a dumb name. It's stupid. It's like, yes, that's the point. This isn't some like big catastrophic problem, right? It's not like Elon deleted Barack Obama's Twitter account because of some stupid reason. Like it's not one of those horrible like this will ruin society things. It's just like a really stupid, ego-driven, dumb decision by a stupid moron idiot who runs the company. And it really, if nothing else, it shows you that the guy is just a complete lunatic. Like, who in their right mind would say, you know what, I'm going to take one of the most recognizable logos, names, icons, and concepts in all of social media, and I'm going to make it X because I think that's cool and I like toy trucks.
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. So first of all, I agree with you. Like whenever people talk about it on, I was about to say Twitter, whatever, on X, whatever you want to call it. Whenever people talk about it on there, all the Elon fans are like, "Oh, it's just a name. Why are you crying about it? Who cares what it's called? Whatever." Exactly what you said. Like just like people talk about like stuff that doesn't matter all the time. Like, yeah, it doesn't really matter, but like you can still have an opinion on it and you can still talk about it. People like whatever, stupid discussion. But the thing that that annoys me so much about the name change is like I think so the reason, or at least in theory, why Elon is doing this, he has this like big dream of making it into like the everything app where you like do all of your payments and like all of this stuff, whatever, like all that. And that was the whole thing like back in 1999 when he was, I think he was like the CEO of PayPal, right? Mm-hmm. And he tried to do this whole thing and then the company kicked him out because they thought it was a bad idea. You can decide if you think it's a bad idea or not, but whatever. Like the thing is, it's like, why, like why rename Twitter to X before you do all the other stuff, right? Like if X is supposed to be the everything app where you do all of your banking and all of your finances and all of your other stuff, and none of that exists yet, and there's not even clear that they're working on it or that there's any imminent release of it. It's like, why change the name now but keep everything else the same? Why not like use that opportunity to say, look, we're launching the next generation with all of these new features, and here's the new name. Like, I just don't understand the timing of this. It makes no sense to me.
Well, everything that he does is impulsive. Look, like here's the thing that I think gave me a lot of perspective, right? A lot of people looked at Tesla as saying like, this is proof that Elon is a mastermind, right? And you can definitely make the argument. I think Tesla was obviously a very, very successful company. They've made a lot of dumb decisions. They made a lot of bad decisions. They still have, issues like build quality, or there's the recent reporting that came out where they've been exaggerating their range and rewarding employees for canceling appointments where they complained about range. That, I would argue, is illegal, false advertising. If you're exaggerating range so much that people think their car is broken, and then you're like internally explicitly acknowledging that you're lying to your customers so that you're canceling their appointments, that's a crime. Okay, I don't know, man. At the very least, that's a big fine. But beyond all of that, Elon Musk only invested about 10% of his fortune amassed from PayPal to buy Tesla. Imagine that. Imagine, what is the average American maybe has $10,000 or $20,000 in savings. Imagine someone says, I've got this investment opportunity, put $1,000 or $2,000 in and work on this already existing thing. That's not a massive risk. That is really not a huge, like, what? So if the company goes bust, it's not like, you really gave it your all, right? I'm not trying to say that means it doesn't count, but I think the whole Elon Musk is a mastermind is just ridiculous when you look into like the chronology of, faking his degree or whatever he did, and then stumbling into a company that got bought by PayPal. By the way, first, make sure you have a dad who can get rich off of mines in South Africa and apartheid. So just go ahead and profit off of that first. That's your baseline. Then go ahead and stumble into a payment processing company that happens to get bought and then become PayPal after you've already left it, by the way, and then invest 10% of your free money into a company. Like, I'm sorry, he's not as smart as he likes to make you think.
Yeah. Did you see the whole thing with they put the X sign on the roof of the Twitter building? Did you see that whole thing?
Yes.
The giant,
and it's the brightest, flashiest thing that anyone's ever seen.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's like it literally like gets completely blown out and the like overexposed on the like any video I've seen of it. It's like ridiculous. Like, oh God. Imagine like living near that.
Fortunately, it looked like it was like apartment buildings, but let me see if I can. Oh man, I was gonna pull up the tweet, but I'm not signed in, and they basically removed access to that, I think. But someone replied, hang on a second, let me find this. There was like the replies to the video of that were the funniest thing I've ever seen. Like somebody, oh, I found it. I found it. I found the picture I was looking for. I'm so happy. For those listening, sorry. You're not going to get this at all. But for those who are watching, it was unbelievably hilarious. The replies, like everyone was showing like these like iCarly clips. This was the one that that made me really laugh.
Oh, is that
like
from
the neighbors?
Is that Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at
the neighbors are all like.
Yeah,
so good. Oh, it's so good. And you know what? There's a comment here, and this is so true. Too bad there's no other place like Twitter. Too bad. Everyone says like, oh, I guess Elon Musk can't be doing that bad a job because Twitter is still running just fine. Do you know why Twitter's still running just fine? It's because Twitter was a great platform. So, like, everyone thinks it's a gotcha when, you know, people were like kind of making a show of like, oh, Twitter sucks now. And then they're like, oh, then why are you on it? Huh? You stupid idiot. I guess you do like Elon. It's like, no. When you love a platform, even if it's being run by a monumental idiot, you're still going to want to be on that platform.
Yeah, there really is no other place like Twitter. As much as others have tried Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, whatever, there's just no other place with like the volume of traffic, like all of the people that are on there and people that go on there regularly and interact with each other and, you know, make posts, whatever. That community doesn't exist elsewhere. These other platforms like Blue Sky, for example, they have a small dedicated community of people that love that platform, and that's great for them. But Twitter is like, or X, whatever. I want to call it Twitter. I don't want to call it X.
Will never call it X.
Thank you. Okay. Twitter is like the one, it's the big one. It's the one that all of the people are on. It's the Apple of you know, threaded social networks or whatever you want to call it. It's the one that everyone goes on.
I like that. Threaded social networks. That's good.
I don't know. Whatever the terminology is, Twitter is the big one. And as much as Elon has tried on purpose or by accident, he has not yet been able to destroy it.
I mean, he's definitely trying his best to ruin it. And
yeah,
I will say, like, it's really stupid that, like, with this whole change to X, to your point, like, he wanted it to, you know, be a certain way. He wanted it to be like the everything app. But, like, they didn't do anything. They just swapped out a couple of PNGs. That's all it did. Like, there was no, this is why I said earlier, like, that this is the dumbest thing that he's done. It's not because it's destructive or ruining the platform. It's just because he literally woke up one day and was like, letter X. And then there it is. Like, what kind of a CEO, what kind of a leader just like impulsively, randomly fell in love with the letter X in 1999. And then he was like, you know what? X. And it still says tweet. It still says retweet. The only thing that changed is now it says X in a little tiny letter instead of a bird. Dumb.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on. We could talk about the logo, that it's literally just like the double strike X from the Unicode like math font or whatever. The random, like, where Elon posted that that like seizure inducing video of the letter X, and it was literally just like an Envato Elements preset that he like dropped the letter X into. Yeah.
Oh.
Or I don't know if it was him. He like reposted that one of his hilarious. Like one of those like Stan accounts made that was just like the X with like all the like wavy like glitchy effects, whatever. And then someone else posted it was literally just from Envato Elements. It was like a preset, and they just dropped the little X PNG and whatever. We could go on and on about all of that stuff, but I think we can at least the two of us can agree that it's funny but sad.
Oh, and sorry, someone pointed out here, he's not the CEO, he's the ex-EO.
Of course.
Yeah. And I got to give a big shout out here to Jazz. I'm going to call it Jazz. I like that name. That's a cool name. Also, nice profile picture. We got some representation for Plaid up in here. I know not a lot of people back Plaid like I do. That's why I was so mad when they made that into a Tesla. But, you know, there you go. Thank you for the super chat. And you're welcome for starting the MacBook repair and upgrade obsession. And that's also a perfect segue into our next topic. which is
Wow.
the $50 MacBook that I just posted a video on today. And I will say, we are in a weird spot, Noah. We are. One of the point that I've been trying to make in the last like three or four videos that I've posted is right now you if you're buying a MacBook for $2,000, tons of options. New, used Apple Silicon devices out the wazoo. Pick and choose your poison. It's great. For $700 to $1,000, you've got tons of choices. M1 MacBook Air and MacBook Pro. You can even find some like deep discounts on an M2 MacBook Air. Tons of stuff. Great, fantastic computers. And as I showed in that video, if you want something that's dirt cheap, $150 or less, you've got your pick of perfectly usable unibody MacBook Pros. You've got even some Retinas are getting down to that $100 price tag. It is great. It's booming. But if you want to spend $200 to $600, what the heck do you buy? There's nothing appealing there because anything with an Intel chip is so close in price to Apple Silicon that like even if you get a pretty nicely loaded like a 2015 Retina MacBook Pro, like a terabyte, 16 gigs of RAM, all specced out for $400, it's Intel. It's half the performance of Apple Silicon. It's loud. The battery life's not as good. It's an old machine at this point. Doesn't have USB-C. If you want something a little newer, touch bar stuff, well, I don't think there's that many people out there who are super pumped right now to buy a 2017 MacBook Pro. They hated them when it was new. Why would you buy that now for $500? So like it's a weird time because there's nothing for people to buy in that middle ground.
Yeah, that is a good point because it kind of goes, we talked about it a little bit before the whole like, Apple Silicon, like what Apple Silicon has done to the used market. And we talked a little bit about how the Apple Silicon the existing like the M1 MacBook Air, those prices are maybe a little bit high right now. And maybe that's because there are so few, we're very early into the Apple Silicon lifespan that there aren't enough older generations to sort of push the price down. But then it's that thing, right, where you start looking at the generations before Apple Silicon and it's exactly what you said, where they aren't very appealing anymore, right? You go and look like back when when we had the unibody era, the Retina era, and then the Touch Bar era, right? We had those three. And when you were in the Touch Bar era and you were looking back at the Retinas and the unibodies, it was obviously, things got better over time. The Retina display was a huge upgrade. The Touch Bars have USB-C and, whatever other upgrades, came over the years. But there wasn't such a big difference, right? Because it was all Intel, and obviously, there were year-over-year improvements, but it was still all Intel. But there was no huge leap like there was with Apple Silicon, and so that kind of it really is just like a cliff, and it's like, and Apple Silicon's on up here, and if you want to jump off that cliff and go down into the old Intel stuff, you can. But yeah, it's really hard to recommend $600, $500, even $400 for something with an Intel chip in it versus like just spend the extra on an Apple Silicon or wait a little bit until it gets a little bit cheaper. Yeah, it's a hard recommendation to make.
Yeah, I don't know. And I'm trying to find an example to illustrate my point here. So I'll share my screen here. Why not? We're gonna do a little live YouTube video. Like this could honestly probably be its own video, or at least the foundation for one. But I'm going to show you that the problem that we have is that the original generation of Retina MacBooks are pretty old now. The 2015 is 8 years old, and the original Retina is 10 years old. So those are there's nothing wrong with them. You can patch them. You can run the latest version of Ventura. You've got a Retina display. They're perfectly good machines, but realistically, the most that I would ever spend is around $300. Maybe four if it's like pristine with the box and charger and all the everything, right? So, and even then, you're kind of pushing it, right? Because you are trading Apple Silicon for Intel, knowing that you're not that far away from being able to afford Apple Silicon or spending that extra money to get it. But if you want something a little newer, the problem is if I try to find the cheapest, like working, decent Touch Bar MacBook Pro that doesn't have one of these C description, like there's something wrong with it tags on it, I'm going to have to scroll down a little while. And here, look, we find for $310, bad condition 2016 base model, effectively. It's got upgraded storage, and that's about it. That's not very appealing. Let's scroll down a little bit more. Here's one for $350. Also, again, 2016. That's not very appealing. That's like the beginning of the Touch Bar generation. It's not any more powerful than those older machines. The keyboard is bad, and you're not going to be able to get it replaced anymore because all of the Touch Bars, as of I think later this year, are going to be more than 4 years old. So like if you really want something that's like a Touch Bar generation, I mean, first of all, why would you want that? And second of all, it's, I mean, look, $550 gets you the thermal throttling Core i9 one. That's like literally the antithesis of Apple Silicon. This was the product that motivated all of us to say, you know what? Maybe Apple should make their own chips. This is it. This is that device. So why would you spend even a 2019 one where it's a little bit more powerful and a little bit better? This is M1 MacBook Air money. And I get that this is a 15-inch laptop with 32 gigabytes of RAM. That's 4 times the RAM, double the storage. But it's a Butterfly keyboard Intel Mac. And it's probably about 4%, if that, more powerful than the M1 MacBook Air at the expense of battery life and heat and noise. Terrible deal.
Yeah, it's really just not worth it. I guess, like, in theory, if you were to buy, let's say you bought that one, right? The 15-inch i9, whatever. You bought that, kept it for a year or two until the Apple Silicon prices came down a bit more, or maybe you had a bit more money to buy, a nicer one. Then what if you sold it a year or two later? How much do you think the value is going to drop from where it is right now? You think it's going to keep going down, or you think it'll stay relatively in that area?
Well, I mean, I have to imagine that the prices would continue to drop because there really cannot be that much demand for those Intel machines. I noticed it. I mean, weirdly enough, even with Apple Silicon, the demand for the used market has decreased a lot, which is probably good from Apple's perspective because people are willing to spend $1,000+ so they can get the latest MacBooks. Before, people were so excited to save money and buy a used one because it was better to do that in a lot of cases. But now, like I can't even, I have been trying to sell my M1 Ultra Max Studio since June. It's been over a month now that I've been trying to sell that, and nobody will buy it. It was a $5,000 machine. I've got it listed for $3,300. No one's interested.
Wow.
I keep getting these lowball offers of like $1,500. I'm like, dude, it's a year old and it was $5,000 and it's Apple Silicon. It's M1 Ultra with the 64 core GPU. And people won't even pay $3,300 for it. Isn't that crazy?
that is kind of crazy.
Like, I don't even know. Maybe it's my own fault. Maybe it was I reviewed too positively the increases in performance that we've seen, especially with M2 Max. I mean, it's a crazy time that we live in where the demand for used Apple stuff has fallen so low that you can buy a working MacBook Pro for $20, that you can buy, that you can't even sell a 1-year-old Mac Studio for 60% of its original price. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. Like, I guess Apple Silicon has definitely done a lot to the market, to the used Mac market. But I guess it is a lot of, because like back in the, well, I was gonna say the old days, but like, okay, a few years ago, when we were still in the Intel days, there was always like, I feel like the unibody MacBook Pros were always like a good purchase. They were always like a good, like, okay, let's go back to the Touch Bar days. Let's say we're in the middle of the Touch Bar days, 2017, 2018, right? The unibodies were always like a fun option because you could do some upgrades to them. You could take out, which I did a while ago, and we did together, take out the CD drive and put a second hard drive in there, or put in, an SSD. So that's what I did. I had the SSD and I had a hard drive as like a dual boot and whatever. So you could do some upgrades like that to them. And then I feel like the Retinas were like, they were also pretty solid options. So you got the Retina display, which is a huge upgrade. Basically, like, it's really hard to go back to a unibody with the regular display after having a Retina. But like the Retina display, and they had the additional ports. They had the HDMI port, the SD card slot, which is great, right? And then the Touch Bar was like the newer ones, whatever. They were thinner. They had the Touch Bar if you liked that for some reason, whatever. But now it's definitely like, over time, obviously the unibodies have become less and less attractive. And then there goes your upgradability, because that was the one that you could really do, a solid upgrade to. And then the Retinas became less and less attractive. And then it's like, oh, now you're kind of stuck with the Touch Bar ones. Do people really want that? Butterfly keyboard is a huge liability. And then Apple Silicon, I feel like, was maybe even the last nail in the coffin. Like, not that the used Apple market is dead by any means, but like, definitely used Apple products are less valuable or less sought after than they were years ago. And it's just, these things that have happened, the way that they've changed over time, especially with Apple Silicon, that has caused that.
That's a really good point, actually, because it's that was that aspect of the previous generations. They got better, but they lost something, right? So that kind of kept things at equilibrium, because when, to your point, when the Retina MacBook Pro came out, it improved because that screen was phenomenal. The build was great. They were fast. They were slim. They had great port selections, but they lost that upgradability and the ability to add those SSDs. So the old ones kept their value because of that. And then same with the Touch Bar. But now everything is now just, it's either it's Apple Silicon or it's not. There's not really that much benefit that you gain. Like, I always mention in my videos, I did a video a couple days ago on the 2015 and why it's no longer the king in 2023. And that MacBook has upgradable storage. It does not matter how much you spend right now. You cannot do that on anything. Like, you can buy one of those things with like 256 gigabytes in it, and for literally $110 on Amazon, you can put 2 terabytes in that 8-year-old MacBook. You cannot do that on anything newer than that. But even with that ability, it's just not, it's still a Haswell Intel Core i7. It's half the performance of any Apple Silicon machine you can find. And it's loud and it's hot and the battery isn't that good. Doesn't matter if you can put a ton of storage in it at that point.
Yeah, I think your framing of like in the Intel days, each generation kind of lost something. Like, it got a bunch of new upgrades, but kind of lost something. That was like a really good way to put it. And I feel like, maybe you could make that argument that Apple Silicon lost. I don't even know what you would argue that it lost from like the Touch Bar days, but like even if there was something, even if you're talking about like, oh, there's some old Mac that you can upgrade the storage in, it's just everything. It's literally everything else. It's like you can upgrade the storage, but everything else is so much worse that it just doesn't, like, it's not, the math is never gonna make sense.
The math ain't math in here. Exactly. Intel Age, Stone Age feels like the same things now. That's a great comment.
Yeah, it's true.
And unfortunately, I would only do this in an emergency, but I have to go for a quick moment. So we're gonna have to do a little episode of the Noah Show.
Okay.
I'll be back very briefly.
Oh geez. All right. Well, hopefully everything is all right with Luke there. But I guess we can take a look in the chat and see what people are saying here. Someone said when the M3 comes out, then I'll upgrade from the Intel Mac. I'm really just waiting for that price drop. I can't feature comments. I think only Luke can do that. But when the M3 comes out, so someone's still on the Intel Mac waiting for the M3. Absolutely. Something that Luke and I talked about on a previous episode. There's that whole thing, Apple Silicon is still relatively new. We have, the M1, right? We have the M2. We're waiting for the M3, but it's still so recent that there are not enough old devices in the pipeline to bring things down, right? Because when the M2 comes out, the M1 is still there. The price will go down a bit. And then, but that's the only one, right? So there's nothing below that. In the Intel days, right, we had the unibodies, we had the Retinas, and we had the touch bars, right? And so when the touch bars were the new one, the Retinas were a little bit less expensive, and you go 2015, 14, 13, 12, and then the unibodies, you go 12, 11, 10, 9, what was it, 2008 was the first one, I think. So you would just go down throughout the years. There were so many options that you could find something at pretty much any price point, which is kind of what we were talking about at the beginning. It's hard to find these things, find Macs that are attractive at that $200 to $600 price point. So absolutely to Lou J, who said waiting for the M3 to come out and then upgrading, right? When the M3 comes out, you could upgrade to the M3. The M3 is supposed to be a pretty decent difference. I think they're doing a new process. Maybe it was the 3 nanometer process, some sort of difference there, right? So there's going to be, a solid upgrade. But even if you don't want the M3, if you don't want to spend all the money on a new Apple Silicon Mac, that's totally fine, right? Because the M2s that are out right now will get a little bit cheaper. You can get them from Apple refurbished. You can get them from eBay, wherever. The M1s that are now 2020 or 2021 model years, they're getting a little bit older, getting a couple years older, but they're still Apple Silicon, so they're still good. And those are going to continue to drop in value, or in price at least. So if you go on eBay, and I don't know what the price ranges are, I'm not Luke, I can't pull these numbers out of my head, but if they're at $600, $700, $800 right now for an M1, and you check back and they're at $500, $600, $700, maybe even getting into the mid to high $400 range for an M1, right? Suddenly that's a much better deal. That solves that $200 to $600 price range issue that Luke brought up at the beginning, because there are other Macs, other Apple Silicon Macs that are available there. So absolutely, we're not sure when the M3 Macs are going to come out. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. But definitely, whatever a new Mac comes out, or any new Apple product, even if you don't care about the new one, at least the old ones will drop in price, which is always a good thing. Let's see what else people are talking about in the chat. Someone said, if we had Intel Macs around and Apple Silicon didn't exist, we'd still be using our older MacBooks. It would be interesting to see, right? Because Intel has made a lot of improvements. I think it was like the 12th gen chips, the Intel. I'm not like a hardware expert. Luke is more of the hardware expert than I am. But I think it was like the 12th gen Intel chips had, a pretty big upgrade. They kind of work like Apple Silicon. They have like the performance cores and the efficiency cores, and there were a lot of improvements. It would actually be kind of interesting to see, if Apple had stuck with Intel and they had these newer chips, could we have gotten, I don't know if we would have gotten to the same place we are now, right? Because Apple Silicon is not just about performance, it's about the integration, right? It's an all-in-one chip. It powers everything about the computer. The hardware and the software are so tightly integrated. The software can take full and complete advantage of all of the hardware and all of the accelerators on the chip, right? But if Apple had stuck with Intel, and Intel has made improvements since, the 2019, I guess was the last time we had an Intel Mac, what would the Macs look like with a modern, current gen Intel chip in them? It's definitely a really interesting question. What else do we have here while Luke is gone? Okay, here's another good one. So Jas or Yas, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, said, I still have an iPhone 13 mini, so I'm okay with having 1 or 2 years behind, 1 or 2 years behind the current one. Yeah, I think the 13 mini is really funny because I was talking with my friend who also has a 13 mini, and he's really disappointed that Apple discontinued the mini series, right? Because now with the 14, we have the 14 Plus, which I think is kind of dumb, to be honest. Like, I get that it's easier for Apple because the 14 Plus is basically just a hybrid of the 14 and the 14 Pro, right? It's the same size as the 14 Pro, but it has the external build of the regular 14. So I understand why Apple did it, streamlines things. Maybe people like the bigger screens, although I'm not sure how well the 13 Plus is, the 14 Plus is selling, but definitely seems like there are quite a few people who are disappointed about the 13 mini, but none of us are disappointed that Luke is back and I can finally stop talking.
Hey guys, welcome. Welcome me, I guess. I think that's a great point that you were bringing there about the 14 Plus.
Mm-hmm.
I also think Apple went the wrong direction because, I mean, the issue with the iPhone is there's not as much product separation in terms of price, right? Like if we go, I mean, what's the price difference between the 14 Plus and the 14 Pro Max? I'm pretty sure it's $200. So like,
yeah,
what I think most people kind of just look at that and say, okay, 14 Plus is $899. Cool. The 14 Pro Max is $1,099. People just want the Pro Max. I think it's ironic because every year the reviews for the past 3 or 4 years, I would say now, have basically been the Pro is great, but you don't need to spend the money. The regular one is just fine, but nobody cares. I would imagine that most people, maybe not by an actual majority, but most people just get the Pro anyway. Like I see way more 14 Pros than I see regular 14s.
Yeah, I definitely see more of the Pro models. And I definitely, yeah, because like the 14 Plus is just a hybrid of the regular 14 and the 14 Pro Max. I feel like the mini was interesting because there's nothing else. There's no Apple phone that's that small. There aren't even that many phones like period that are that small, but like there are no Apple phones that are that small. If you want a big phone, you can get a Pro Max. It's more expensive, but you can get it. You can't get a 14 mini or a 15 mini. They're probably not going to bring it back, right? So,
yeah, that's true. I think having effectively doubles of the 6.7 inch screen is unnecessary. I get having Pro and non-Pro. That makes sense to me because that's like that middle ground screen size where I think people want that. But to have two 6.7-inch displays. I mean, yawn, absolutely yawn. If I go ahead and share my screen here, we can actually see this handy dandy chart. Oh, hang on a second. There we go. There's a little cleaner tab for you. So take a look at this chart. All right. You can see the breakdown here. The regular iPhone 14 is the largest segment of the graph. I wish it was labeled so I could tell you exactly how much it is, but if I use my mouse, it looks like just about 20, maybe 25% of sales are the iPhone 14. That's what you would expect. But the 14 Plus is tiny. It's like 10%. And then the 14 Pro and Pro Max are, what is that? That goes from like about 30 to about 60. God, this is a very poorly labeled graph. It doesn't really show you very much, but
yeah,
you can definitely see that, especially at launch, the 14 Pro was actually outperforming seemingly the regular 14. The people that care about the iPhone don't really, they're going to get the good one. People don't want the new stuff minus some features. They want the newest iPhone, and that's the Pro. So I think the rumors we've heard about an iPhone 16 Ultra, that is probably the direction that Apple should go. I know it's not good for like inflation because it's going to be a $1,500 phone, but you bet your bottom bumper I'm going to buy that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I just have to say, I love how this graph uses 4 very similar but ever so slightly different shades of blue.
Yes.
For the 4, literally they had to pick 4 colors for this. I guess 5 because gray is one of them. They had to pick 5 colors and they picked 4 like blues and 1 gray, and it's like barely comprehensive.
And the blues are and because the color chart is on 2 levels, I was like, wait a minute. The iPhone 14 and the 14 Pro Max, that's literally the same shade. They're so close. Yeah, no, I really hate this graph.
It's a horrible graph, but it does show that the 14 Plus is by far the worst selling 14 series model, and I don't think that surprises anyone.
I hope they discontinue it to punish them for taking away the Mini, because people were mad when they did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not too late for them to bring back the Mini. I don't think that they would if they, kill it off and then bring it back. Doesn't seem like an Apple thing to do, but you never know. And I think we were talking about the Ultra, rumors about the Ultra, the iPhone Ultra before. Okay, here's the problem with that. The problem for me is that it's gonna be the Pro Max size, if not bigger. And that's too big. No,
the rumor is even bigger than Pro Max. Like we're talking 6.9 inches.
I mean, that's nice, but that's horrible. If they made, because that's the problem is if and when this phone comes out, I'm gonna have to seriously consider it, and I don't know if I can make myself do it. But like, dude, the 14 Pro size is such a good size. If they made the Ultra in this size, then I would get it. But I can't. It's
tiny,
dude. So big. No. The Mini is tiny. The Pro Max is huge, and the regular Pro is the Goldilocks right in the middle. Perfect size.
I mean, that's probably why it sells the best. But from that terrible graph, you noticed the Pro Max and the 14 Pro are not far apart in their sales. I think it was a good decision when Apple decided to make the 14 Pro and Pro Max be feature paired, right? Like there was a while where the Pro Max would get a little something extra, right? The iPhone 12 Pro Max had that extra little thing, that sensor shift camera, which then filtered down to the 13, the regular, and the 13 mini. That was an unexpected turn of events. And since then, Apple
realized, I think correctly, that choosing between the Pro and Pro Max isn't a feature choice, it's a preference. It's people want the screen size or they don't want the screen size.
Exactly. And that's because that always, I know that you like the Pro Maxes, but I like the Pros, and it always bothered me a little bit that the Pro Max had like something extra that the Pro didn't, and I'm glad that hasn't been the case. But then the Ultra is going to come along, and it's going to have a bunch of little extras. It's going to have maybe even some big extras, or at least some medium extras in there, and it's going to be too big. It's too big.
Not a problem. No such thing as too big. Go big or go home. That's what I say. And I'll tell you what, Noah, I'm glad they're doing it because you've been in a comfort zone. That's right. I'm just going to say it. I know because I remember I was there. All right. We both got the iPhone 5. We were excited. We were like, oh, yeah, the screen got bigger. That was great. Then the iPhone 6 came out. And what did you buy? Was it the iPhone 6? No. It was the 6 Plus, wasn't it? Because we were like, oh, screens are small. Oh, man, phablets. Remember when that was like a word that people used?
Yeah.
And it was like, yes, this is so exciting. This is huge, literally and figuratively. And then you also got the iPhone 6S Plus, if I recall correctly. Then the 7 came out. You skipped the 7, understandably. But 2017 is where all hell broke loose because the iPhone 10 came out and you got that, of course. But then you were brainwashed. You were previously a big phone boy, but the iPhone 10 brainwashed you, Noah. You had it for 2-3 years. Then you got the 12 Pro, the 13 Pro, the 14 Pro. You're stuck in a rut, my friend. You need an Ultra to tempt you back to the dark side of the huge, enormous phone, because then you'll realize how amazing it truly is.
I am sure that there are many circumstances where having the larger phone is nice. I watch a decent amount of YouTube videos on my phone. I'm sure it would be nice to have a bigger screen to do that. Whatever, texting, scrolling on Twitter, not X, whatever you're doing, I'm sure it'd be nice to have a big screen. It's just like the portability and like having that giant thing in your pocket. Like, I don't know. It seems like a lot.
Look, I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't a lot. It is. Absolutely. But I think it's worth it because the screen is just magnificent. It's so good. And honestly, I think it's when the new phones come out, I always get multiple sizes and I always get tempted by the Pro. I'm always like, oh man, this is small and lighter and it's very compact. But whenever I do inevitably go back to the Pro Max, I'm always greeted by that beautiful big display with a larger keyboard that's easier to type on, more comfortable viewing of videos and photos. And I'm like, this is it. This is where I belong. I shall not wander.
I guess, whether or not the Ultra is the right phone for me, if and when it does get announced, I will definitely consider it. And let's be real, I'll probably end up getting it because I can't help myself. But I'm not gonna say that you're wrong. I know we've had this discussion before, and to varying degrees of success, sure, but but I would be interested. I would consider the bigger phone, especially if there's other good. I mean, we saw some renders. If they do, imagine like the cream, whatever color with like the orange accents and the action button on the side. I feel like it could look really, really nice. I don't know. I would have to consider it. regardless of the size.
You would have to. I'll tell you what would get me on board regardless of size or price.
Mm-hmm.
And that is this glass. That sapphire glass on the Apple Watch Ultra is indestructible. Sam tested that when we were doing our stress testing last year when we crashed the cars, and Sam literally obliterated an Apple Watch Ultra, and he literally could not crack the screen. We dragged it out of a car. He smashed it with a brick. We could not crack the screen. Now, sure, on a larger screen size like 6.9 inches, maybe you could feasibly crack or scratch it. But it would be so hard to do that. And it would look so good. It just looks incredible. And it never scratches or blemishes. You just wipe it and it's completely fresh. Look on your wrist right now, Noah. Grab your shirt, do a little wipey. And yep, look at that surface. It's gleaming. It's perfect. It's absolutely, there's not a single scuff or scrape anywhere. And I will pay obscene amounts of money to get that on a phone.
I didn't even think about that, but about the screen. But now that you mention it, I'm remembering back to my Series 5, which did have some scratches on it by the time I was done with it. They were, they were, well worn, scratches of love from great past experiences and so on and so forth. But definitely,
of love.
Yes, they definitely
horrible.
They definitely had, it definitely had some scratches in a way that the Ultra does not. And the Ultra's definitely been through some things. It's been through when I fell off my bike a week ago, which
yes,
I remember we were maybe going to mention, but we're almost out of time. And it's, survived that without any scratches, whatever. I think, so that's definitely a big one. I think the biggest thing for me with the Ultra would be battery life, because maybe the Pro Max is fine. I know it's definitely better, but my Pro is at 89% battery health, and it does not last a day on a charge.
Oof.
Imagine the Ultra battery life on an iPhone where you could go 2 days, even a day and a half. Maybe you can already do that, but I definitely can't. That would be a big one for me.
I get pretty close. I mean, my screen time is probably less than yours because I know you use yours for navigation and like stuff when you're cycling. But I'm at 51% right now. And I can show you my battery usage graph, but I know that you've continually had issues with battery life on the Pro, and I have not had a ton of screen time, but you can see that graph. That graph is pretty good. Pretty darn good. And my percentage is 95. So
wow.
It's sort of a vicious cycle, if you will, when you get the Pro, because obviously there's less battery life right out the gate, but because the battery lasts less, that means you're putting on more charge cycles and wearing it out faster. And so not only is your battery life worse, but it decreases more quickly. And that's why the Pro Max is king.
I guess regardless of what the battery looks like in the Ultra, and I'm sure that, it would be better than the Pro Max because that was a big thing with the Apple Watch Ultra. But even, I guess, just going up to the Pro Max, the bigger phone with a bigger battery, I have never disputed that the Pro Max is the battery king. I still think the Pro is the size king. Maybe I'm wrong. We can disagree on that, but I've never disputed the Pro Max. Well, that's fine too. But the Pro Max is the battery king. That is true. Maybe the Ultra will almost certainly take that crown from the Pro Max.
I think it will. And I, for one, I'm going to be so excited. Could you imagine
going away for like a weekend trip and not even bringing a phone charger?
I can't. That would make that would give me like such anxiety to go on a trip without a phone charger. But like if you could do
That's true.
If your phone could handle it, that would be pretty crazy.
I'm just saying, I don't think it's that far fetched. Talk about making a phone thicker and larger. I mean, think of the difference between the 14 Pro and the Pro Max. Not huge, but it makes a big difference on battery. Oh, I want it. Oh, I want it, Noah. I want the Ultra.
I want it too. And do you know what else?
And it'll be USB-C.
Yeah, that's true. Do we think it'll be this year? USB-C this year, but the Ultra this year? Yes or no? No.
I don't think so. If it does happen, I'll be ecstatic, but the CCRP is saying next year.
Yeah, we haven't heard very much about the Ultra, but even this year is supposed to be USB-C, right? So that'll be exciting.
Correct. Yeah, that on its own is going to make me the happiest man on earth. But you know what will not make me the happiest man on earth, Noah?
What?
Having to end this episode.
Aw.
I know. But unfortunately, all good things come to an end, as must this episode of Dark Mode with me, your host, Luke Miani.
And me, your host, Noah Rubin. We'll see you next week, and have a great night.